I feel that by moving forward and living my life to the fullest is the best way to honor him.
I'm Pam Lundell, and this is A Widow's Heart. Welcome to A Widow's Heart. This is episode 15 already. I'm your host, Pam Lundell. And as I introduce you to my guest, I'm amazed at how God works to bring just the right person at the right time to bring a story of hope, but also all the raw emotions on the journey. And I want to introduce you to an incredible lady. Her name is Char Fontan Westfall. And I have your book in my hands, Char. It's called A Navy SEAL Widow's Permission to Grieve and a Prescription for Hope. Welcome to A Widow's Heart.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah, and I was looking at the date of your husband's death, June 28th, 2005, correct?
Yes.
That's when my husband passed away 2 months later on August 14th. And
Wow.
a long time ago, 17 years ago, right?
Yes,
And
it
here
seems
we
like a
are.
long time.
Yeah.
Some
I was gonna
days.
say, and here we are still sharing our stories because that's what we do best to help others. So, I don't even know where to start. I loved reading your book and about how you and your husband Jacques met and you married a Navy SEAL. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we met back when I was in college. He was about 7.5, 8 years older than I was. And I was home from college for the summer working at the military base, the pool line base. And I was a Navy brat, and a swimmer. And so that just seemed like the logical and most perfect summer job to have. And despite being a Navy brat and my dad telling us, don't marry military, you don't want to go down that route. And I knew I didn't because I was not an ideal Navy brat. I did not like moving around. But we met and it was just kind of like, this is it. This is who I want to marry. And if he wants to date me, despite the fact I'm still in college, that's what we do. He was a rescue swimmer instructor at the time. And he actually told me he was getting out of the Navy. And so I said, okay, so this might work. I won't actually have to be a military wife because he's getting out. And then he came up on his reenlistment date and went and talked to them. And they said, well, why are you getting out? You're at 10 years or you're almost at 10 years. And he said, well, I've been wanting to be a Navy SEAL for years and you haven't let me go. So I'm done. And they're like, well, if we let you go, will you stay in? And he says, yes. So then he had to come back and have the conversation with me like, yeah, so about that getting out, they're not going to let me because, we worked out this deal and I'm going to go to Bud's training out in Colorado and see if I can
Wow.
actually do this thing. So
What is involved in Navy SEAL training? I'm just
oh,
curious. That's because it's an
yeah,
amazing elite group.
yeah, it's a lot of mental, obviously physical and swimming, and you gotta learn, shoot and all that kind of stuff. But I just remember it was a lot of the mental game as far as putting up with the daily grind and the wear and tear and being cold out in training. He was, I wouldn't say lucky because he started in, well, yeah, he was one of the lucky ones. Started in April and he finished in October. So he had more of the warmer months out in California. But I mean, he still was like, this is grueling. They're beating you down every day. It's, the swims and you have to pass the test and you have to do this. So it was a lot. But, as he kept saying, I just got to tell myself I can do it. And that's what he did.
Yeah. We're talking with Char Fontan Westfall, author of A Navy SEAL Widow's Permission to Grieve and a Prescription for Hope. I love that title. It certainly spells it out. So you guys were both so young. And will you share whatever you can about your story on that day, June 28th, 2005?
Yes. So, it was what we thought was going to be his last deployment for us. He was coming up on, I believe, like 18 years in the military. Like I said, he was older, so he had been in prior to us meeting. And we just decided it was time to start a family. And we both just thought it'd be better if he was actually around. And so before he left for that deployment, we had a lot of talks about the plans for afterwards. And what was really strange is the couple times he actually brought up that if something happened to him, that I would promise to move forward and to remarry and be a mom. Cause he's like, that is, you are born to be a wife and a mom. And I would just hate for you to never do that
Oh,
because of losing me. And I was like,
what a hard
it gets me emotional
conversation.
just talking about it. But I
Yeah.
mean, like, just to remember that. And I just remember thinking he was so crazy to even have this. I mean, this was our third deployment together. He had never had this conversation with me ever. And so he left and he was supposed to do 6 months in Afghanistan, or 6 months, 3 months in Afghanistan. And then they go and do another 3 months somewhere overseas, maybe Germany or something like that, and be there for support for the platoons that they switch out with. And so he was not far from being switched out and going to more of the support role. And so the night before June 28th, I received a phone call from him, but I was at a meeting, so I missed it. And I remember earlier in the day we had spoken because I was selling our house and buying a new one. So he kind of had a little bit more freedom in contacting me a little bit more regularly than normal. And I said, as I always did, be careful. He's like, oh, I'm just going out and flying around on helicopters today. All will be fine. So he called me that night. I missed his call. And then when he didn't call me the next morning, there was just something inside of me like this doesn't seem right. He would normally give me some sort of communication, whether an email or a quick phone call. And so I just went about my day, and I was a private tutor for an autistic child at the time. And it was our day to go out in the community. And so I took him, and his older brother would join us on occasion. And so we were out eating just a local little fast food type of pizza restaurant. And I remember seeing on the news them talking about a helicopter that was shot down. And I just remember at that very moment just being like, oh God, please be with those families. I just can't imagine what they're going to be going through getting that news. So as I was driving home with these boys in the car, I get a phone call from one of the Master Chief's wife of SEAL Team 10. And she's like, hey, I know you missed the wives event tonight due to work, but I just want to let you know that we don't have any information, and I don't want rumors circulating and people calling you. We don't know anything yet. And I just immediately, like, my stomach just sank. I was like, that's them. Like, holy cow, this can't be real. And there was just something in my heart and my stomach right then. I was like, it's Jacques. I know that this is him. And he was on that. And so I call my dad, and he's, get your friends over there. Don't stay the night alone. And so I did, and we all just kind of came together, and I had 2 or 3 of them spend the night with me that night. Their husbands were deployed as well.
Wow. Mm.
So, yeah, so then the next morning, we get a phone call that, okay, it is our guys with SEAL Team 10, but we still don't know anything if they're okay. We haven't been able to reach them. So, just hold tight. And I would always host a weekly dinner for everybody. It started out as just girls, and then as the guys would come and go with different platoons and different trips, I always said, if your husband's home, bring him, because we get so little time with them. Why not all be together and we're all friends? And so thankfully, I had a house full of people that day, and we went to start the grill. One of my other friends' husbands came down to the garage with me. I was on a second floor of a condo unit, had to walk outside and go down to our garage, and we heard car doors shutting. And I turn around to see 3 or 4 people in uniform that
Yeah.
started walking towards me. So that's how that all began for me that day.
Oh, we're talking with Char Fontan Westfall, telling her story of losing her warrior husband. I love how you call him your warrior husband, Jacques Fontan, a Navy SEAL in what was known as Operation Red Wings, and that turned into a movie, correct?
Yes, yes. The one survivor, Marcus Luttrell, he came back, was encouraged by the military to share his story. And so that's he did. He wrote a book about what happened to him. And then yes, it became a movie, The Lone Survivor.
So Char, there were 18 who died in that helicopter crash in Afghanistan, part of Operation Red Wing. So you were a brand new, very young widow, along with 18 others as well. Um, what was the aftermath, the immediate aftermath, if I can ask you, trying to grapple with that truth?
That was, being 29 years old and widowed and knowing that I didn't have kids. It was a punch in the gut, I would say. Just the thought of losing my future. So many people, will say to you or said to me, "Oh, you're so young, you'll move on, you'll move forward."
Right? Oh,
And
oh,
you're like, okay, for one, I'm not even thinking about that right now. But two, you kind of just go with that whole feeling of, you found your one-time love. How do you find that again? And I'm never going to be a mom and I've lost him. And now what does my future look like? It was really hard to look into the future. And I was just really thankful that I had a friend who didn't know, understand my situation, but she's like, Char, we just got to do this day by day. Like, you can't start thinking about what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do here? She's like, let's just go through this, day by day. And that was a huge help.
yeah. Char Fontan, Westfall, my guest on A Widow's Heart. And do you remember the widow's fog or some strange things that maybe happened in the aftermath? And can you tell us a little bit about his service as you're walking through that?
Yeah, it definitely widow's fog is a true thing. You just kind of wake up every day hoping and wishing it was a nightmare that you just woke up from. I don't have a ton of detailed memories from that time. I remember a lot of people coming and going, different meetings I had to have with the military. Like I said, Jacques had been in for a long time. We were coming up, it was like, I think the 18-year mark. And he had served in the fleet, as they call it, beforehand. He would deploy on ships and then became a rescue swimmer and then a rescue swimmer instructor, and then had spent the last 5 years in the SEAL teams. And so he was gone a lot, but we made the most of all the time we had together, and we had made some really great friends. But so it made it really hard. I remember being really angry with God in those first definitely days, but it turned weeks and months. It took me a while to come back around to not my faith. I don't think I ever lost my faith, but just going to him and wanting to be involved, going back to church. It was kind of, I had to be dragged almost kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
Um, and would leave there, I think, even more angry than when I went in. Um, and then moving, I had to move because I had sold our house or condo and was buying a house. And I was like, I'm not moving into a house that I bought for him and I to then
Yeah.
start having a family. So then I left Virginia Beach very suddenly, and I don't recommend to
Mhm.
other people. It was a little too much of a drastic. I mean, it worked out in the long run, and I see where God was kind of directing me and had me through that time. Um, had no clue what I was doing with my life going forward. It just was to be somebody so young and just such a planner, and I had my whole life planned out and what was going on in a job that I loved. And now it was like, I am husbandless, I am homeless, I am childless.
Mm.
I mean, I like, who am I and what am I supposed to do now? It was a kind of like a black hole, it almost felt like.
Well, can you tell me at what point, and I love how you're just so transparent too about being angry, and it's okay, to be angry. And also, I read something that just struck me because I thought the exact same sentence. It was, I'd like to die, but I don't want to take my own life. It was just like kind of just feeling dead inside. And it's like, you know what? I could be in heaven with John, and I didn't, I was worried. I was like, oh my goodness. And I thought, maybe, and this was 4 or 5 months later, maybe I should ask for help, you know? And I know that you did that too.
I did. I remember I had those thoughts every day as I would drive back and forth. I found a house in here in Florida, about 25, 30 minutes away from my parents. I would go see them, or I had a friend, my friend Drew, he would, get me out of the house or different things. But anytime I was alone in my car, I had to drive this bridge, and I was like, I would literally scream at God and like, please just take me too. Like as mad
Mhm.
as I was still talking to him, I guess, in some way. And so it had probably been about a year into losing him, and the anger was just becoming more of my personality than happiness. And
Mhm.
the littlest things would set me off. And so I finally was like, maybe I should go talk to somebody at church. Maybe they can explain to me, because one of the other things is, I don't know if you've heard this a lot, but oh, well, God only lets, this happen to people who can handle it. And to
Yeah,
me,
he
that
he
made
doesn't
me
give you more than you can handle, and that's so not true in the Bible.
Yes, exactly. I was like, have you read the Bible? Because he gives a lot of very strong people and Christians, and he's never said that it's to the strong or it only happens to these people. The more I heard that, the more anger I got. So I was like, I'm just going to go to one of our pastors at the church and see if he can explain this to me. And why was I chosen? Not that I want this to happen to a friend of mine, but like, geez, thanks. I mean, I'm such a always had a relationship with you, Lord, and now this is my thanks and what
Right.
you've given
Yeah.
me. And so yeah, I finally went and got help, and that's where he was like, Char, it never says that in the Bible. It never says that he's only going to give it to the strong, or he promises he'll never leave you, but we're all going to walk through hard times. And that's what you need to focus on. So through his help, and he connected me with a Christian counselor, I was able to start releasing some of my anger.
Yes.
And one of the things he told me to do is well, two things. One, write a letter to Jacques explaining my anger to him. And I was like, I'm not angry at him. Like, I love him. He, had no control over. And he's like, but aren't you upset, in some way that he chose this career that was so dangerous over you? And I had never, I guess, allowed myself to
Mhm.
admit those feelings. And so when I did finally write a letter and just kind of scream it to him, it was like, okay, that anger too. I didn't even know I had anger towards Jacques. And then I spent many nights just on my knees, just yelling at God and questioning him and telling him how angry I was. And because the counselor was like, it's okay. He knows it. So you might as well just put it out there and have the
Right.
conversation with
Yeah.
him.
Yes. And Shar, I was just going to say too, and I've shared this before. I'm sure that some of our listeners are like, yeah, Pam, we've heard that before, but I just find these correlations so amazing that, I was angry too, because my husband died of an accidental drug overdose. And it was really sudden. And two things when I finally went and found a Christian therapist was you need to forgive him, and you can love John but hate the addict, and both of them were just earth shattering to me. And I think that's something invaluable if you are, speak to the widow right now who's listening, who's maybe a month out, 6 months out, a year out, who just can't, we say move forward. You don't, you always have them with you in your heart. Here we both are 17 years out, still sharing our stories. And like you, that's why I call this a widow's heart. It's because I can share what I know now. I don't really feel like a widow, but I've been there and I can share. Anyway, speak to the widow right now who maybe just isn't able to, you know, see beyond her anger.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is to allow yourself to go through the feelings and not try to bury it and make it okay for other people. I think one of the things that kind of halted me in my progress is I was just never wanted to make other people feel uncomfortable, and I didn't want to accept these feelings. Not that I didn't accept he was gone, but just I felt like if I allowed myself to cry, then how can I ever be happy again? And then I was like, well, if I'm happy, then does that mean I'm not loving him or missing him anymore? And I think the reality is that you can have the times of laughter mixed with the grief, and it's okay to experience the feelings, but you have to make a choice every day to get up and keep living. Honor them by living and remembering them and not letting them go and not just putting them on a shelf because you think that's going to help your heart. Let yourself have the bad day if you have the bad day. And the next day you wake up and you're like, okay, today's a new day. I can love them. I can have a couple tears, but I'm going to keep on living for them. And I think the counseling is a huge help too, because I just don't know where I would be if I wouldn't have gone and let them help me deal with those feelings. Because obviously, I think that's not something we can do on our own.
Absolutely. Char Fontan Westfall, author of A Beautiful Tragedy. And then that's an amazing, an amazing title. A Navy SEAL Widow's Permission to Grieve and a Prescription for Hope, sharing her story on a widow's heart. And Char, we're going to take a quick moment because we have an awesome sponsor at A Widow's Heart. It's called Wings for Widows. And I don't know if you've heard of them before, but it's a national amazing group of volunteers, financial volunteers who come alongside widows and widowers and help you with your finances. It's not a like a free consultation and then you have to pay us kind of thing. It is absolutely free. And I don't know about you, but when I was a brand new widow and I could really think straight for the first time, a few months later, I was like, I don't want to be taken advantage of financially. And Wings for Widows is just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for you to get some expert Christian help with your finances. And you don't have to have a lot of money. You can have no money, and they will help you in that area too. So to learn more, check out Wings for Widows. It's wingsforwidows.org.
Love it.
Yeah, sure. So a few years after my husband passed away, I was working at a radio station, and widows started calling me and saying, "Oh, I know your husband died. He was also in radio. And if you can do it, I can do it." And that turned into helping launch a nonprofit for widows called Widow Might, Might. And I know that as you were going forward day by day, week by week, you ultimately are still honoring your husband's legacy and Operation Red Wings. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, the Navy SEAL Foundation and the Special Ops Survivor Foundation have been two foundations that have been really instrumental, I think, in my growth. Um, they both have formed a foundation where they can bring the surviving spouses together at different retreats throughout the year. And so over time, I have been able to, I don't know if I would say mentor to some of these because we're all, special ops, all pretty strong, independent women. But just to go alongside of each other. And if you're having a bad day, or, I have a couple friends that are just a couple years out, and they'll pull me aside at these retreats, and they're like, it's so refreshing to see where you are today, remarried with kids, and though that you're still able to talk about Jacques. My husband now has no insecurities about him or about my past marriage. And they love seeing that too, because they're like, okay, so there are men out there that are secure enough to marry somebody with so much baggage. And it's like, yeah, we do have baggage. I mean, it's not,
Mhm.
this part of my heart is not going anywhere. I mean, that's always reserved for Jacques, and Drew knows that, and he's okay with that. And so being able to talk with these other widows and be together and just show them that there is life moving forward, I think is very helpful for them as well.
Yeah, I like in your book in the acknowledgments you say to my fellow widow sisters, thank you for without our bond there are times I would have been lost. No one understands another's grief journey like a fellow widow. I can always be with you, raw, vulnerable, honest, silly, and free. I absolutely love that. And I have a husband like Drew. I got remarried 8 years ago, and Tim, because we both, are kind of in the public light and stuff. I reshare my story, and so many times I kind of like look at him and go, "Here I go again," you know. And he's so supportive. So we're so thankful for these guys. Um, can you? Okay, so it's been. We were talking about how you support your husband's legacy, and what is the name of that organization again?
The Navy SEAL Foundation does a lot for us widows, and the Special Ops Survivor Foundation. They're both very active in hosting yearly retreats that bring the surviving spouses together. Obviously, the Navy SEAL one, you have to be attached to the SEAL team, so that's a smaller group. But the Special Ops Survivor Foundation covers all the special ops surviving or special ops across all the branches of the military.
Wow.
So we're very lucky in that sense, because I know that so many do not have that type of support system.
Well, I know that we've got a younger widows group in Widow Might too. And I just have to ask you, because it was really awkward for me after a couple years when I was started to be asked out on dates. I'm like, I've been out of practice for a long, long time, you know? And what was it like for you before you met Drew? How did you meet Drew?
Well, I'm one of the lucky ones. I would say our parents knew each other through church, and I had met him when I was home. Um, well, Jacques was deployed, so we were just. It was like our families knew each other. It was like, oh, finally, nice to meet you, and that sort of thing. So when I moved back after Jacques was killed, he lived just down the street from my parents. So he would literally call me, say, "What have you done today?" And nothing. I'm laying on the couch. He's like, "Have you showered?" I'm like, "No, I don't. I
Yeah,
mean, why?
I
What do I have to
remember.
shower for? I don't have a job. I don't have a husband. I'm like, I don't have a life right now." So he would make me shower and let's go golf course. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. So that friendship eventually turned into dating down the line and then, marriage. But I see a lot of the girls struggling dating, because they're like, how much do we put out there at first? Some of them like throw it all out there. Okay. And the guys either, okay, I can handle that, or they're like, okay, whoa. So then, and they're like, well, what should I do? I was like, I don't know. I think honesty is always your best answer, but I don't know if I would just kind of bleh it all out there. So
I know.
aggressively.
I know. I think I was on what was the Christian dating site, like maybe after the first year and a half. I don't know if I've ever shared this before, but I was sitting there and I literally had a bottle of wine, and this was the longest questionnaire in the world. And I got more depressed as I was going through, and I never went through with it. Met my husband when I was on a girls' trip in Chicago.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, so and no one's saying you've got to go find somebody else, but it's always a question that people ask me. So I wanted to get your perspective on that too.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of the miracles that you've seen along the way.
Well, just thinking back, when I had to move and just feeling completely lost. I mean, I left my best friends. So I feel like I said before, I lost like everything. My parents and my siblings were wonderful, but my sister was married to an army guy. She had just gotten married in April, so she was living over in Germany. My brother was still active duty in the Air Force and was
Oh,
living up
wow.
in Delaware. Yeah, we did nothing, my dad asked. Go figure. Any of us listened to our father.
Oh,
So I came back and I was like living with my parents, and I would call Drew at work and be like, please make me laugh. And so I think the friendship that he put that in my life really helped save me and put me in such a better place moving forward. I also am very thankful of a dream that God allowed me to have one time. I I mean, it was sad, but in some ways has really given me a peace in my heart. I was talking to Jacques in my dream, and he was on the helicopter with one of my other, one of his teammates that he passed away with him, but that we were really close with. And I wasn't on the helicopter, but I was with them. And so I remember saying, please get off this helicopter, please get off. And he just kept going, it's okay. And I was like, no, you don't understand. You need to get off this helicopter. And he's like, Char, it's okay. And I, just kept, and he finally looked at me, he goes, I'm okay. Like, I'm good. And you need to be too. And I think that to me has been such a special piece that God has given me that helped me to be able to continue living my life and not, just giving up and living in just such a sad and lonely place.
it's a gift. It really is.
Yeah.
I had a similar
Mhm.
experience. It's just beautiful and amazing how God will just kind of open the window of heaven and just give you a little sign, a God more than a God wink, I would call it. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So what What message do you hope that your book, A Beautiful Tragedy, sends to its readers? And you're going to have a lot of new ones after this.
My goal was to let them know that they weren't alone. I think like as you shared with me and just the and not necessarily wanting to commit suicide or end my life, but just that feeling of utter despair. I don't think that that is a normal thing people share, and because you feel like, oh gosh, I shouldn't feel that way. That's not normal. Are they going to commit me? Are they going to, turn me into some, doctors? And so I think there's a lot that you keep inside, and I just wanted people to know that you're not alone in different thoughts. Like to feel that sadness is normal. And I think to be allowed to experience it is helpful. Um, but that you do just need to keep moving forward. And there are people who understand you and that people that can help you. And you will never get over it. That's another thing I can't stand is people are like, oh, you're over it. You've moved on. And I'm like, I haven't moved on. I moved forward so that Jacques' life could still be honored. And I feel that by moving forward and living my life to the fullest is the best way to honor him. And so, there's still days 17 years later that, can be a little hard. And I kind of look back and be like, my gosh, I can't believe this happened to me. But then I look at all the blessings that I have, and I'm just thankful for our relationship, what we had, and what he taught me. And I know that he would want me to be happy and to get up every day and keep living.
That's absolutely beautiful. And I know one more thing I wanted to ask you about too is you moved Jacques' grave. That was really an interesting and really thought out and prayed for thing that happened. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, he didn't specify exactly in his will what he wanted. And I, at the time, all the other girls were like, well, I don't know what we're doing. And okay, we'll wait, we'll do Arlington, but they couldn't do it until all the guys came home from deployment and I was moving, they were all staying there. And so all I could think about was him needing to be with me. So I was like, okay, he's getting married in Orange Park, Florida. And so I brought him back. And over time, just talking to some of his teammates and some of our good friends, I just, I would just kind of every once in a while be like, I wonder if I should have buried him at Arlington. And they would never look at me and tell me no, but they would say, that's what I would want. And
Oh,
I think he'd want to be with his friends, or I would want to be with my teammates. And so I prayed about it. I really talked, had them, eventually give me some tough answers of, their thoughts and feelings. And I said, okay, I think he should be with his guys. I think he should be with, who he fought alongside, and in a place where he can be honored every day in a place such as Arlington. And so with my dad's help, we contacted the teams and Arlington, and everybody worked just so well together and just helped. They, you know, exhumed him, I guess is the word you would say, from Orange Park, and then my sweet mom and dad drove him to. He was cremated. let me preface with that. He was
oh,
cremated. We drove him to DC because I was like, I cannot take him. I don't think I
it's
can.
too weird. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So
Yeah, I
I
get
know.
it.
I was like, I can't do it. I can't drive. Drew and I are not going to drive with his urn in the car. So they were like, no, we got it. We'll do it. So they drove it up there and delivered it to Arlington. And then we were able to have a ceremony, not, like a typical, but, they did the, really nice graveside ceremony for him with the taps and all that. So it was really, really nice and well done. And I have not regretted that decision since I did that back in November of 2011.
Wow. And your book came out in 2020. And
Yeah.
what made you decide to do this? I mean, it's an absolutely well written, beautiful book with the stories and the laughter and the tears. There are a lot of tears in here, but it's a love story and it's a tribute to your warrior husband. But what made you write the book?
Actually, my husband now, Drew, he said, there's so many girls that talk to you and ask you about, remarrying and your story and how it is you get up and you still honor him so well. And so then a friend of mine that I was working with at a foundation at the time, she agreed. She's like, I don't know why you haven't written a story. I mean, you talk about how there wasn't anything for you to read, and why don't you just put it out there? And we got a lot of pushback from publishers. They wanted the seal story. And I just kept saying, that's not me. I'm not the seal. I am not going to pretend that I know about
Oh, right.
his
Yeah.
life in the teams. I don't know. I mean, they're like, well, you have to know some of his about what happened on deployment. And I said, I might have a little bit here and there that I overheard when the guys were, drinking, but that's not my story to tell. And I would never betray Jacques or the teams or any of his fellow teammates by
Right.
sharing that information. So I said, no, this is my story. I wanted to share how we met, my what life as a military wife, and then my journey of grief, and then finding love again. And so between my husband Drew and my friend Myra, they just encouraged, and Myra helped me do a lot of the interviews and writing and piecing things together that, she was like, I'll interview your brother and sister, because there were just some people that I was like, I just can't. I cannot ask them those questions. That will just be too
Oh,
draining on my heart. And so between the two of them, they pushed me and got a lot, like I said, pushback on publishers. And I really thought it was never going to happen. And I kind of gave up on it. And then Andy from Ballast Books reached out through Melanie Luttrell back in maybe 2019, 2020. And he's like, hey, I can help you. We're a hybrid publishing company, and you don't necessarily, you're not on your own self-publishing. We help you with that. And so it was just, I think, God's way of saying, let's go. Here it is. You
yeah.
can do it.
Oh, well, it is an incredible book, and a lot of pain and emotion and faith involved there too. It's called A Beautiful Tragedy, Char, Fontan, Westfall. And Char's book is available on Amazon. A Widow's Heart is a Wow God production, a ministry of the University of Northwestern St. Paul. Discover more at wowgod.com. If you've lost a spouse or know someone who has, please share this podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify. A Widow's Heart is grateful for the support of Wings for Widows.